Well, we're back on the road again today. This is our second day of going around the countryside, seeing these great veterans that served together in Vietnam in '68 and '69. And we're in Homosassa, Florida, in the home of Airy Hill. And we've got Wayne Lee that's joined us today, and Larry Dobesh, who's sitting right next to me right now, is going to be our first guy to talk to today. And okay, so Larry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you tell us your story about Vietnam, and I'm going to start you off by asking you what was the circumstances? Did you join, or were you drafted?
No,
or?
I was drafted.
You were drafted?
5th of June, 1967.
Okay, and where did you take basic?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Fort Leonard Wood, and how about AIT?
Down in Swampland, Fort Polk.
Oh, Fort Polk. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when did you get into Vietnam?
November 13th, 1967.
Okay. And do you remember specifically when you walked into the company after the bleachers, remember, and they told you were going to be in the Wolfhounds and so forth, what was your first impression when you got off the truck?
Well, first of all, we're hearing rumors from everybody you don't want to be in the Wolfhounds because they're the baddest characters around. And later on in replacement school, we were told that the Wolfhounds loved to burn villages. Mm-hmm. And I found that to be true. They didn't resupply us with bullets, they resupplied us with matches.
Mm-hmm. So who was the first person you met when you got to the company?
Tom Clappett, my first sergeant.
I remember him, yes, Tom Clappett, yep.
Great guy. It so happens that myself and Tom Clappett lived about a block and a half from each other in Chicago. That's where he was raised. But he later moved to California, and he recognized my address on the sheet and asked me where I was from. I was out around Midway Airport. Well, he said, just what address? And I told him. He says, I grew up a block from you.
Wow, it's a small world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you keep in touch with him?
I wish I would have. I don't know how to.
Oh, I know exactly where he's at. Okay, so you meet Sergeant Clappett, mm-hmm. And does he tell you to go over to the supply room and pick up your weapon? And
absolutely, and then it was replacement school after that.
Okay.
In the first bad area.
I don't remember that myself. When
you didn't have to go to replacement school?
No, when I went in, Teach was the company clerk, and he came out, and there was three of us. There was Russ Bruns, myself, and Ray Bourgeois that had gotten on the truck from the bleachers, and they drove us out to Cu Chi. And Teach came out, and the first thing he said to us is, welcome to the Wolfhounds. Mm-hmm. And he looked at us and he goes, there's three of you here. And he goes, the average is that none of you guys are gonna leave.
Make it home.
The way that he wasn't gross about it. He didn't say you're all gonna get killed, but he said none of you are gonna leave like you just walked in. And he said with the Wolfhounds, we just have a tremendous amount of people getting killed and wounded. And then he gave each of us a lighter, a Zippo lighter, and it had the Wolfhound, or it had the 25th Infantry Division on it. And he said, guys, everybody that comes in, I like to give them this and so forth. And it had engraved on it, the Charlie Company and so forth. And I found out many, many years later that his father had like 500 of these things made up and sent him to these in Vietnam.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and so...
I didn't get mine till I was going home, though.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so basically he said, okay, I've got you guys... He had his clipboard. I got you checked in. He pointed over and he said, go over to the supply room and ask for Jim Calvert. And he said, Jim will be issuing you your M16
T850 gear
and your gear and your gear and everything. And I remember walking in there and there were 3 or 4 guys in there milling around and of course when you were brand new you didn't know anything, and they said, are you the new guys? Yeah, we're the new guys. Okay, well there's a pile web gear over there. Go pick it up. And the first thing I did is I bent over to pick up web gear, and there was blood on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality hit.
Mm-hmm.
You know that this wasn't.
You try to find web gear that didn't have
This wasn't
body parts.
This wasn't AIT, and it wasn't basic. This was something different.
the real deal.
You know, so when you were assigned to what platoon in the
Third.
beginning? Okay, third platoon. Do you remember who the platoon sergeant was and the platoon leader at that time?
We had a lieutenant that I still don't remember his name because we used to call him 3-6, which is his call sign on the radio. And I'll tell you, my squad leader was Bruiser, Dale Cutler.
Dale Cutler.
Dale Cutler had it together. I hung around with him because I wanted to be good.
What a great mentor he was.
Oh, yes, he was my mentor.
Yeah.
But Dale Cutler was fantastic in the field. When he came back in, don't get him drunk. He wanted to fight with everybody.
Well, one thing I did not serve with Bruiser, but everybody that did, like Willie and those guys that served with him, said that they never met a leader that cared more about his men.
He was natural born.
And that he would always put them first. In other words, if it came to whether or not getting somebody killed or getting somebody hurt, he always made sure that he was thinking as far as the safety of the men.
I don't think we even had a platoon sergeant at the time.
Well, he was I was told that he kind of was leading the.
He was.
Yeah.
He was a natural leader. And he was there only like a month ahead of me. He came like in October. I got there in November. He was already in a control situation.
Yeah. Did you know that he came to a reunion?
You know what? I missed that reunion. It was after I started going.
Yeah.
And I wanted to. My main purpose of going to the next reunion, or the first reunion for me, was to see him.
Yeah.
I wanted to see him so bad, and he died.
Well, you know, there's going to be somebody at this upcoming reunion that you're going to want to see.
What was that?
And if you don't see him, you're going to regret it just like you did Bruiser.
Oh, wow. You just stabbed me in the heart. I'm telling you, I wanted to see him so bad.
No, I know.
He was my mentor.
And you know he wasn't well, right?
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah, he wasn't well. He actually passed away shortly after the reunion. So
Laura told me he was the most highly decorated American Indian in Michigan.
that's true. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you remember your first actual firefighter action?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Where was that at?
We're in a village someplace. I didn't know where it was. And me and a guy by the name of Gillespie. Gillespie had been in the field, and he got a sprained ankle, so he was out. And when I came in, he was in the hooch, and they finally sent him and I out together. And him and I had just got done eating sea rations together, and we were supposed to do a pinwheel maneuver in the village where the line swept. I walked one way to the center of the pinwheel because I knew I didn't have to walk far. Okay? He went in the pinwheel, into the online. They machine gunned him to death. The last time I saw him, his body was smoldering. They just shot him to pieces. So by me being lazy, I guess I saved my life.
Yeah. Welcome to Vietnam.
Yeah, he was just a good kid and totally scared. He was so afraid, and rightfully so. Look what happened.
Well, I know I was scared.
Oh yeah, me too.
I mean, I think if you talk to a real combat vet, if any of them tell you they weren't scared, they probably weren't telling you the truth. There was an incident that you had shared with me where some point men were.
Oh yeah.
Would you share a little bit with us about that day?
That's a rough one. That one I keep deep inside. We're in just walked out of a fire base, and sometime in January, right after Christmas, and We had 2 point men out there. Well, they shot their legs out. You know how they used to do?
Mm-hmm.
So that everybody would go up and try to help them. Well, everybody who tried to help them was being machine gunned. Okay? So this individual was carrying an enemy pistol on him, a Tokarev. And he had it on his side, and we warned him not to carry it. So the firefight lasted into the night, and we heard horrible screams from that area. I mean, blood-curdling screams that I still hear. The next day we found that they skinned him alive. And the other point man who was with him, they let him live. But anything you said to him, anything you tried to communicate to him, he was totally gone.
1,000-yard stare.
There was nothing inside. There was nothing, and it took me a long time to realize why they let him live. Is because they want him to carry the message. This is what happens when you kill one of our officers. So, but I didn't dawn on me back then. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand why one guy lived and the other guy. Mm-hmm. Until this day, I still hear that man screaming for all he was worth. They skinned him alive. Mm-hmm. And just picking him up was gory beyond your wildest imagination. You seen every body part he had, you know, all of his muscles, all of. I prefer not to try to think about that one. Wow.
Yep, that was you know, that was the reality of combat that so many people, you know, Vietnam vets just don't share that information with people, but they will share it with another guy that was with them.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's,
I know. You know why? You get it.
And when I started, you know, trying to find the guys, I realized right off the bat real early that their families didn't know a lot about their service in Vietnam. And it was because when we came home, that was the end of that. You know?
Right.
We came home and didn't get a very good welcome. And
first of all, you're afraid to say anything because it's liable to get you in a fight in a bar. Mm-hmm. Somebody would run their mouth on you and you wanted to protect your honor. The fight was on.
Yep. Now, another thing that happened in Charlie Company was as we were in battles and we were going through men and so forth, they'd take guys from one platoon and put them with another.
Yes.
So you started out in 3rd platoon, mm-hmm. and then you came over to our platoon, 2nd platoon, mm-hmm. and so you actually got to serve with a lot of different guys.
Yes. Well, my platoon eventually ended up being 3 people. Mm-hmm. Me, Coleman, and a guy by the name of Sanchez, Gilberto Sanchez. And there just wasn't enough of us to go around, so they assigned us to 2nd platoon.
Yeah, you wouldn't have even made a good listening post. I mean, there wasn't enough of you left.
And the thing is, both of those guys had been wounded before and sent back out. But somehow, some way, till this day, I can't explain it. I don't have a scratch. I didn't get a scratch. I sprained an ankle.
Do you think it was luck?
No, I think it was divine intervention. All
right.
There's somebody helped me do that, and I don't know who it was. I know who it was, but a lot of people would disagree with it.
What do you remember? What do you remember about coming into the 2nd platoon?
Glover. Glover was fairly new. Glover was younger than I was there. And he took command, took control, fearless, totally fearless. I remember Glover telling me a story when he was just before he got overseas where his grandmother, American Indian, told him that don't worry about it, he was going to survive. Well, I guess she was right. Who else could survive a wound like that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Well, Sergeant Glover was my when I got into the platoon, he was my platoon sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And he was another guy I know that the safety of the guys was always number one. By the way, did you know he could see in the dark?
No.
He has an unusual, the rods and cones in his eyes.
Really?
And it's a rare thing, but I could never figure out why he always took us out at night on point. He always walked point. Whenever he took us out on ambush patrols at night. And when I asked him about that, he said, "Oh, well, I could see. I could make sure I didn't walk you guys into an ambush."
Wow.
So he had the ability to see.
Do you know Glover is from my area in Chicagoland?
No.
Yeah.
No,
He went to Bremen High School in Tinley, and I just left Tinley Park.
What were some of the what kind of action? Do you remember anything going on when you were with Glover?
Just how fearless he was, and
I mean, do you remember any firefights or any?
not in particular.
Okay.
Not in particular. But I remember being at Train Bang with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the time me, Ari, and I saw the kid get his legs blown off. And by that time, my tour was sort of winding down.
Mm-hmm.
And although we get to hell more than that, I was continually over there.
Where did you eventually wind up? I mean, like, were you still out online at 9 months or 10 months, or did you?
Yeah, I was out on line till like my 9th month, but then they changed the rules, and even the rear guys had to be out in the field. So I was in the field too, but I just didn't go out humping.
Yeah.
You know, me and Calvert were running resupply,
Yep.
and believe me, nobody else knows this or nobody else. Calvert was the best supply sergeant we ever had. He would get stuff out to those guys that I remember bringing big mattress covers full of clothes that he had washed, had washed at the laundry. We never had a change of clothes until that.
Oh, I know.
Never had a change of clothes, but he would make sure the guys had clothes. He would make sure the guys had anything they needed, whatever they needed.
2 beers or 2 sodas a day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a beer and a pop,
Yeah.
and a lot of times the pop was better than the
Yep.
beer because it quenched your thirst better.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've had, you talked today about some of the demons that you carry with you. Some of those
There's a lot
stories.
more than that, but
How have the demons after Vietnam, how have they shaped who you are today? If you could talk about that.
oh, it's the whole thing. The whole thing, it's what I am. Okay? It teaches you stamina. It teaches you to never back down. It teaches, on and on and on and on and on. Your whole character is formed by it. Everybody's, it was just a year, but that year is the building blocks of what your character is. Say what you mean what you say.
If someone looked at you and said, we need you to help some veterans who can't quite.
Oh, you're damn
forward, you're
right,
like,
in a heartbeat.
What would you say if I was that hurting veteran today? What would you say to a veteran to try and give them hope?
All you could do is talk to them one-on-one, because the rest of the world don't understand them.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the world don't get it. I don't know why it's like I talked a foreign language when I came home.
Mm-hmm.
They hear it. It's like, okay, here's what I refer it to. A woman has a baby. She'll tell you about it, but could you really understand it? No. You can never really and it's the same scenario. Having a baby, well, yeah, I know it's a severe thing and not painful, but would I really experience that ever? No. But another vet will understand another vet in a heartbeat, no matter what war they've been in. I've been in VFWs where old timers were talking, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over. Different times, different situations, but you could almost know the story that they're going to tell just by listening to them. Yeah.
Who were some of the guys that you remember? I know you mentioned Glover. Towards the end of your tour, you had mentioned to me Garofalo and
Yeah.
can you just talk a little bit about
I still see Garofalo.
who you were hanging with and
Craig Hacker. Craig Hacker got hit at Trang Bang. Me and Ari put him on a helicopter. He had a hole in his rear end this big, and I could stick my fist into it. He jumped in a hole, and a mortar round landed in there with him and blew him out of it. And I went to get him, and he was screaming, "My fingers, my fingers, my fingers." Well, what happened is shrapnel passed through two of his fingers. He was more worried about his fingers than he was the rest of his body for some reason. And I looked at him, and he was just cut on both two fingers. So I told him, "Hey, your fingers are still there. You're okay." But I rolled him over, and I could not pack enough bandages into that hole. And then I tied it up, and then it was, of course, around his buttocks. And when you stand, you have a different configuration,
sure.
you know, and everything fell out, and everybody's just standing there watching them, and I'm saying, "Get me bandages, get me bandages." And nobody knew where they were. I took the one I had off of me and put it on him. Hacker was just in bad shape that night.
Did you ever stay in touch with him?
We tried to get in touch with him, but Hacker does not want to get in touch with anyone. Another guy, Fleming, we tried talking, me and Ari tried talking to him, we tried talking to Hacker. They act like maybe they want to put the war away forever, you know, and that's their prerogative, but it'd sure be nice to talk to them. And Hacker was a good guy. He was an instant NCO, and just like Glover. And Hacker, he knew he had limited time. After that one incident, he wasn't going to go back in the field no matter what.
Do you, if you could define through your Vietnam experience what a hero looks like, what would you tell me the definition of a hero is?
I hate to tell you this, there are no heroes. The heroes are on the wall. There are no heroes. There was so much common valor going on daily, you can't define it. Your father was one of them. He stuck his neck out all the time, okay? And everybody stuck their neck out for each other. And if you weren't noticed, if it wasn't mentioned, another day would just happen and it'd go on all over again. The day I sprained my ankle, we were coming off an ambush, and I was carrying 2 packs. I carried like 100 pounds on me, full of M79 ammo here, full of M79 ammo on my back. Well, I didn't cinch the packs tight. Didn't cinch them tight. And that was the main thing you had to do. Otherwise, when you ran, they'd swing and they'd control you. So I didn't cinch them up. The base camp's right there. We'll walk into base camp. They busted an ambush with a 50 caliber on us. So I went and jump in a hole, and the packs just swung to a certain way, and that's why I sprained my ankle. But my ankle got so big they had to cut my boot off to get my ankle out of it. But as I was laying there, a black guy named Kelly, and we used to call him Machine Gun Kelly because he carried a machine gun, he crawled up and he dragged me into safety, risked his own life, grabbed me by the pack straps, pulled me out of the line of fire so that I lived. So, and that went on daily. That kind of stuff went on daily. He stuck his neck way out for me. He didn't have to. He did. And how he was that strong to pull me plus 100 pounds that I was carrying, I'll never know. I'll never know.
How have the Wolfhound reunions impacted your life?
Oh, geez. They're the most, you know what? That is the only place, and I meant to tell you this outside, that is the only place that I can go and feel absolutely comfortable. Since I've been home, in that room, it is total comfort for me. everybody knows what I am. I know what they are. There's no pretenses. There's no putting on any show. There's none of that. It is for me, it's one of the most fantastic things that's ever happened to me. Just being there with them.
It sounds to me, Larry, if I understand you correctly, that this is an experience in your life that you would never miss.
No, never. Well, I know what you're trying to do. I know what you're trying.
You would never.
Uh-huh.
And you know why? Because you know that it's not only for you, but by you being there, it's for us.
Yeah.
And you know, and I've told guys, the reunion is us.
Right.
It's not, you know, yeah, do we have a good time at the reunion? Absolutely. But it wouldn't be a reunion if it wasn't for you and me.
Yeah.
And
Such
Aaron.
is the truth. Such is the truth.
Right? I mean, all the guys that show up,
Such
you know,
is the
that's
truth.
what the reunions are.
I know.
You tell us whatever you feel or whatever you'd like. You know what? I want you to say whatever it is on your heart that you know is going to be something to somebody 50 years from now.
Okay, that was my whole main motivation for wanting to do this. I'm not really good on camera, okay? But hopefully my grandkids will get something out of this. Hopefully, maybe their children will get something out of this. Their freedoms aren't for free. Whatever they get in this country comes from guys like you, guys like Hacker, guys like Glover. That's where it all comes from.
And you know what? Guys like you.
I'm not a hero. I'm not a hero. And you will say the same thing. I know you will. I know the heroes are on the wall. Mm-hmm. But there is a price to pay for your freedoms. Don't squander them. Don't squander your freedoms. Don't give them up like they cost nothing. Because every one of them costs something. And hopefully, my grandkids really aren't interested. My son, my daughters aren't interested. Okay? But hopefully someday they will be, and they can see this.
You bet.
And that's what I want it to be all about.
Okay, Larry, thank you so much for your time and spending with me. And look forward to seeing you at this year's reunion. And we'll just, you know what,
I'll try.
We'll just keep this going.
I'll try.
Okay, buddy.
I want to. I want to.
Yep.
It's good for everybody.
Yep, it is.